ghosts. I like ghosts. Ghosts as a motif. A few months ago, this is my finished stuff box. There's lots of cool stuff in here. Like this one that I did a video on. And some like patches. I've got a video on how to make these as well. But a few months ago, I started making like ghost patches. So I got like a candy striped ghost. You can just like put them on your clothing. This one is like ditzy print. This one has kites. This was a prototype one. It's got roses. I did a concept art piece recently. The client wanted the phrase, I can do all things through spite, which strengthens me. And she ended up going for like this design, where she wanted like a botanical background with strong lettering. But I thought about doing a series with ghosts and speech bubbles. I've done a piece before with speech bubble, and it was an alien on a cushion cover. So I'm thinking, you know, I have the stencil for these ghost patches here in my stencil folder, which many years ago was a folder of printed out bad Legend of Zelda and Lord of the Rings fan art. Because I was a very cool child. And I have my ghost stencil in here. This is made on rigid plastic, like from an old notebook cover, with the paper outline on top. So I'm just thinking I could crank out a bunch of mini ghost wall hangings. I could, you know, just experiment a bit and do some experiments with ghosts. So I'm going to do that. Ended up with 13 these guys. So I guess I'm making 13 little wall hangings. Thinking about the final dimensions for these pieces, and this is an A4 notebook. This is actually my kanji practice notebook. But I think it's quite a good dimension for this piece. You know, I don't want to end up accidentally going too large, but I don't want them to be super tiny either. They'll be about 9 by 14. In terms of background fabrics, I've got this whole box full of these amazing West African wax prints. So I think they would work really nicely. You know, you've got that really punchy, bright colour, then with the white of the ghost against it. So I think that orange one is a definite. Maybe some of this yellow one, that's really fun. I've got that same design in the green, in the it's like teal and red. That's gonna look really cool. This length here, the width of the fabric, ended up being enough to make 3 of these without really any waste, so that's really good. So I just cut a strip horizontally across the wrap, and then it's good to go, and I just cut that down. So now the next stage is to cut out interfacing and heat meld that onto the back of this so that it's more rigid and won't move around when I'm doing my embroidery. All done. We're back to interfacing. So ready for the next phase. Next stage, pressing up the bottom and the edges. So this is one I've done it on, and then you get this nice clean finish on the front. Because they're quite a simple shape, I'm just using glue stick to hold it in place rather than using my spray glue. Spray glue is really good on more intricate shapes because it gets in all the intricate spaces, but with something this simple you can just use a glue stick. And then I've just got my ruler here to make sure that on each one I'm putting them in pretty much the same place. So I'm going 1 inch in and an inch up. That's one down, 12 to go. Have my stack all with my ghosts all ready to go. Pretty cute. I don't know how I feel. I mean, it's kind of got this wiggly quality, but I don't know if I like that or not. After I finished the first one, I wasn't really sure how I felt about how the freehand embroidery had turned out, because it was pretty messy. This is my first one. But I talked to some friends online in an art server and decided to just stick with it, because I thought, you know, it's kind of got this sketch element to it. It feels a bit more handmade and personal rather than just machine done. And I kept going, and it was a bit like doing calligraphy. Like, I worked out what my brush strokes were with my needle, and so they've come out really well actually. So I managed to get 7 done yesterday, including the first practice one. They haven't had their threads trimmed yet. So all the machine embroidery's done now. The next stage is I'm going to press them to make sure they're nice and flat, and then I'm going to press over the little sleeve at the top that will house the dowel, and of course add one of my room-made labels. So what I usually do is I have it folded over. It's a bit tricky with one hand, so that it's just in place and you know exactly who made it. Rue made it. Just hand sawn all of my dowels that are going to go along the top for hanging, and now the next job is just sanding off all these rough bits so they don't look all ugly and janky, because we don't want that, do we? That's 0. Final assembly time. I've got my wall hangings, I've got my dowels. You put a dowel through your wall hanging. And put a lot of glue at this end and just wrapping it around. Okay, so that is one done. With some very sticky hands. So let's talk about pricing and how I worked out my Etsy prices for these pieces. So start off with my materials. My material costs were quite low. The fabric is actually misprinted fabric. So I was buying them, I think it was £5 for 5 yards. This is quite a long time ago, so it's probably not that much anymore. So for fabric, I put down £5. Interfacing worked out probably at about £5. The thread would have been about £2.50. I do use quite a lot of thread when I'm doing my freestyle embroidery. The pine dowel, that's the stick the pieces hang from at the top. And that dowel worked out at about £3 for all of them. And then I billed myself for the string at 50p. Those woven room-made tags I have are 32p each, so 12 of them was £3.84, and I've rounded that up to £4. So my total materials cost was £20 for 12, which is pretty good. Then I worked out my hours. I said on day 1 I did an hour and a half. That was mainly choosing fabrics, sticking on, interfacing and cutting things out. Then on day 2 I worked about 3.5 hours, and on day 3 I did another 3.5 hours, and then the time taken to photograph, edit and do all the Etsy descriptions, that kind of things, was another 1.5. So all in all, that was a total of 10 hours. I pay myself a skilled wage of £18 per hour, so that's £180 for my labour costs. So then I add my labour costs of £180 to my material costs of £20 for a total of £200. Times that by 1.3 to cover Etsy fees and shipping. I like to include postage and packaging in my price, it makes things more appealing to buyers. That gives me a total of £260, and then I divide that by 12, which is my number of wall hangings, and that gives me a price of £21.60. Then I round that up to £22, and that's how much I'm selling these for in my Etsy shop. So what did I learn from this foray into batch production, and would I do it again? I think the answer there is definitely yes. I found it was a much more time efficient way of doing things compared with my pieces where I do them one by one. Usually it can take me 2 to 3 days just to make one piece, but with these I managed to do all 12 over the course of 3 days. This is partly because a lot of your time in a studio that's a flexible studio space like this one where it's my bedroom, a lot of your time is spent setting up and taking down. So I can't just leave the ironing board in the same place, I can't leave my cutting mat out all the time, and I can't just leave things set up and ready to go. It's not a factory space that I can slip into and start working straight away. I have to set things up, I have to get things out, I have to have my tools and everything. So when you do just one piece, you still have that set up and takedown time. Whereas when you do 12 pieces, it's the same amount of time, but then that labour gets divided in terms of costs between all of them, which is much more efficient. It was fun to explore an idea on a theme. I think it's quite a good thing for artists to do generally, to take something, run with it, see how it works with different looks and different finishes. So I enjoyed doing that. I can't often do that because I'm using reclaimed materials a lot of the time, so I just don't have the quantity to make something over and over and over. It does make it a bit more commercial. Now, whether this is a good or bad thing depends on your point of view. I want my art to be more accessible, and by batch producing, I've been able to lower the price on these pieces compared with my other works because less time has gone into them individually, which is a great thing. Hopefully this will open up my work to some people who may not have been able to afford my work in the past. I'm really happy about that. But another aspect of it is, you are doing the same thing over and over again. You might find that boring, you might find it a bit repetitive. I found when I was doing the freehand free motion embroidery, it was actually quite difficult on my forearms and elbows because you have your feed dogs on your machine lowered, so you are the one controlling the flow of the fabric, and it takes quite a lot of skill, attention, and almost tension in your arms to do that. All in all, I think it was a great exercise. I'm really pleased with the body of work it's produced, and I think I'll definitely explore batch production again in the future. If you want to buy these pieces, they're all going to be up on my Etsy. My Etsy shop has the same name as my YouTube channel, Roomade, and I will leave a link to that below in the description. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed following this journey, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!